Good afternoon and welcome to ENG4E Term 2A, a class brought to you by WASA Distance Education Center. I'm your instructor, Mike Laverty, and today is Thursday, March 2nd, 2023. We are already on class 15 of this course, and today marks the start of our discussion of Unit 3. There are 4 units in this course. In ENG4E, that's grade 12 workplace English. So we have 4 units and we've gotten 2 completed, and now we're just focusing on the last 2 before we transition to preparing everybody for the final exam. But still a lot of content to cover before we get that far. So just a friendly reminder that tomorrow will be our my first Fun Friday broadcast. So that's myself and 2 other employees at WASA will be doing a broadcast tomorrow from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. And we're hoping that people can phone in and participate with us live on the air. Those that do will be eligible for some great prizes. So that is tomorrow, Friday, March 3rd at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. So, as I mentioned, we've gotten Unit 1 taken care of. Unit 2 is done. We'll probably spend today's class and then weeks 5 and 6 talking about Unit 3. We will talk about Unit 4 during weeks 7 and 8, and that'll give us a week to talk about the final exam preparation. And then also get to keep in mind that the week after, that's if you register to a term, you write the final exam. So I guess that would in a sense be week 10. If you are registered as an independent learner in this course, you're not tied down to that timeline, but you can only write the final exam once you have all of your work finished in units 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that's all of the key questions, all of the culminating activities. Once all of those are submitted, then we can talk about arranging your final exam or your course culminating activities. So to write a final exam, you need a location where someone can proctor your exam, or another time a word they use is invigilate. But that just means that somebody is in the room with you when you write the test. And for whatever reason, whatever circumstances you might find you're in, if you can't find a time and a place to write your final exam, then I will assign you a course culminating activity. And that's just a large assignment that's similar to the final exam, but that you complete in a few days and hand back to me, rather than completing a timed exam, which is a timed 2-hour exam. So if you're listening on the airwaves at 91.9, thanks for tuning in. Just note that you can always phone into the studio at 1-807-737-4017, or you can phone into the studio at 1-800-465-7144. You can also listen on Bell ExpressVu, channel 972. And if you go to Zoom, and that's our Fun Friday tomorrow will also be broadcast on Zoom and live on the radio. So if you go to zoom.us and you enter in the meeting code, that's 417-6699-799, you can get access to the class as it broadcasts live. This class broadcasts live every Monday to Friday from 2 p.m. to 2:50 p.m. Central Standard Time. You can find me on YouTube. You search for Laverty WASA, Laverty space WAHSA. So Laverty WASA. type that into the search bar, you'll find my page. If you just type in WASA, you'll find the pages of other WASA teachers, so there's tons of great content on there. So check that out if you need help with previous units of ENG4E, or if you're enrolled in ENG3E or OLC4O, the other two courses that I teach. Please reach out to me by email. That's mlaverty@nnecschools.org. Find me on Facebook. Send me a message on Messenger. That's Laverty Wasa. That's the same as my YouTube channel. And if you phone the WASA office at 1-807-737-1488, extension 2211, you'll get my direct line. If you get the receptionist, just ask for Mike. And you can also phone our toll-free long-distance number, 1-800-667-3703. We are standing by, ready for your call, and can answer any questions you might have. We've got teachers, administration workers, people that can help chart your path towards finishing your high school diploma. So that's what we're here for. That's what we get paid for. So please reach out to us. We're here to help. My office hours are Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. I teach from 1 to 3 p.m., so it's hard to get in touch with me then unless you're phoning into the class. And I'm usually at my desk all day Friday, 9 to 3, but of course tomorrow from 11 to 12, I will be doing my Fun Friday broadcast. So I won't be available then, but the rest of the day you can find me here. Here's your suggested progress. So at this point, 3.5 weeks in, you should have made contact with your teacher, read the study guide, Unit 1, Unit 2 of ENG4E, read chapters 1 to 7 of Where the Rivers Meet, completed all the assignments in Unit 1, and completed about half of the assignments in Unit 2. All right, so here is today's lesson. We'll look at our quotes of the day. These are about communication. I guess more specifically, they're about business communication, so communicating in the business world, communicating inside a business, and communicating from business to business, so networking with people in your field, your workplace, talking to coworkers, but also communicating with other people who are not in your organization. And we'll look at key questions 30 and 31. So our learning goals are to explore various ways that people communicate professionally, so emails, business letters, memos, reports, etc. We will also do a close reading of several examples of business communication. And that's how we will explore those various methods. We'll look at a few examples closely. So your success criteria are to become familiar with various forms of communication, business communications, by reviewing their format and purpose. So two very important words, format and purpose, okay? So we need to be very familiar with those terms, as they will help us to succeed as communicators. It's always important to look at something and recognize its format. You know, what kind of genre is it? What type of writing am I looking at? And a document's format is often dictated or I guess determined by its purpose, right? So what is it for? What use does it serve? Why is it being written? Who's writing it? Who do they want to read it? Who's the author? Who is the audience? Who's the recipient? Right? So we look at how things are written, what form they take, what's their general kind of layout and format, and then we talk about the purpose, like why somebody would write it. And you'll use that knowledge to complete key questions 31 and 32. All right, so after doing a bit of googling around, I found some great quotes about communication that I just wanted to share with you. The first one is from Jim Rohn. He's an author, speaker, and entrepreneur. He says, if you just communicate, you can get by. But if you can communicate skillfully, you can work miracles. So that's a great quote, right? So, we can do communication to just simply get by, to get the job done, to, just to get something moving from point A to point B, to make someone do something we want. But if we communicate skillfully, then we can truly work miracles, and we can inspire others, and we can we can achieve great things, right? So that's more of an inspirational quote. And sometimes, in the workplace, you just simply have to get the job done, and you don't have the time or the skill or both to work miracles, and you shouldn't expect to work miracles in every aspect of your life, and don't expect to work miracles every time you communicate with other people. But it's something to strive towards, and to know that when it really matters, your ability to communicate with someone can truly do work miracles, and can make things change. And communicating with the right person or the right organization at the right time can truly make things happen. Next one's from Tony Robbins. He's a motivational speaker. To effectively communicate, we must realize that we are all different in the way we perceive the world, and use this understanding as a guide to our communication with others. So that's just a great piece of advice for communicating. And that's why whenever you write something, whenever you write and communicate with other people, it's always important to stop and think about your audience, and try to put yourself in their shoes, and just say, like, okay, like, why am I writing this thing? How is this going to be received by other people? And just acknowledging that the way you see the world isn't the way that other people see the world, right? So it's important to stand up for yourself, and to believe in yourself, and to express your ideas and your needs and your desires and your wants. But you also have to acknowledge that other people are different, and they see the world in a different way. And if you want to communicate with them, then you've got to show them your particular way of seeing the world. But you also have to acknowledge that just because you see something one way doesn't necessarily mean it's the truth, and other people have to believe it too. But we use that to guide our communication, right? And the final one from Roy T. Bennett. He's an author, and he writes, listen with curiosity, speak with honesty, act with integrity. The greatest problem with communication is we don't listen to understand. We listen to reply. When we listen with curiosity, we don't listen with the intent to reply. We listen for what's behind the words. Right? So communication, it goes both ways, right? You're sending out messages to other people that, because you want to be heard, and you want people to hear your voice, and you want to get done the things that you want to get done, and you want to solve the problems that you see are problems, right? But you have to take the time to listen to what other people are saying, and to read their communications, and to try and understand what they're getting at and what they're going through. And a lot of miscommunication happens when people aren't listening, and they're just simply listening to reply, right? And I think that's so you can't get too wrapped up into your world, and just an acknowledgement that communication is, it's a two-way street, and you know, the word community and the word communicate, they have a similar root, right? In communis, which is Latin for common, right? So common ground. So so think about that, like community and common ground when we're communicating with other people, right? So we should have a shared vision. We may want different things, but that shared mission should be to hear each other out and listen to each other. And we don't have to agree with other people, but we do have to listen to what they're saying and acknowledge what they're saying. And that's what today's class will be about. So, key question 30 from Unit 3. This is characteristics of a letter. You are to complete the following items regarding the sample letter you have just read. So we're gonna have this is how it reads in your assignment. Ensure that your responses are written in complete sentences. So sometimes when you start to work on these unit assignments, these key questions, there will be a text in question. So, like in this case, a business letter that you have to read, or in some cases it might be, a chapter from a novel or an excerpt from a short story or something like that. So you may want to read the questions before you read the text itself, and that might help you. It might help you to answer the questions that you're being asked to answer, right? So, what kind of letter is this? That's 1 mark. If you don't know the different kinds of letters, then you have to look for that in the handout. Is the letter written in block or modified block format? How do you know? And then we have part C is rewrite Lori's letter as a memo that could be sent to Mr. Fair, 6 marks, using the following format. And part D of the question asks us to send an email message to your teacher stating how you feel about Lori's letter. Do you agree with her decision to write Mr. Fair a letter to express her thoughts? Does it have an advantage over a phone call? Why or why not? Okay. And then we also had, I've included some information here. This is information about business letters. So, a business letter has a basic purpose, and that is to inform. So you're either providing somebody with information, you're making a request for something. So you're just simply giving them information, and the other person doesn't necessarily have to do anything. It's just sometimes you'll see people will send emails and it'll say FYI. It's just simply for your information. You don't have to do anything. But so you can either send a letter because you want to give somebody information, or you can send a letter because you're making a specific request. So you're asking them to do something. Or you're trying to persuade them or build goodwill with others in the workplace or another company, right? So these business letters can be sent inside a company. They can be sent between members of an organization, or they can be communication that you have with someone from a different company. So here's other forms of letters. So we have a letter of apology that's in response to a customer service error. We have a letter of application or a cover letter. That's when you apply for a job and you have a cover letter that explains, and we covered this in last term. last week. So think back to our discussion of cover letters. A follow-up letter is for after an interview. So that would be, you applied for a job, you had the interview, you haven't heard back, you would write a follow-up letter. A letter of acceptance, to accept the job offer. A letter of complaint is to a company about a product or poor service that the company has given you. A letter of resignation, so when you're moving to another job. A thank you letter for typical business or personal situations. So that's, thanking someone for a service they've delivered, thanking someone in the organization, and they say it could be for business or for personal reasons, right? So maybe if there was a death in the family and you were looked after by the company, by your employer, whatever the case, you could write a letter thanking them for that, or just for, any other act of kindness, right? So business reasons would be related to the business, and personal would be, something happening outside of the business, like in your personal life that you're thanking them for. A letter of request, to request information or to ask a favor. And a collection letter, to ask a customer to pay for goods and or services received, right? So someone has already got the product or they've received the service, but for whatever reason they haven't paid for it. That's what that letter is for. So let's have a look at the actual letter that you find in your unit handout. So we have general delivery, Sagicot Lake, Ontario, POV 2PO, and then a space, and then the date, and it's written to Mr. George Fair, Sport Check, at 320 Superior Avenue, Thunder Bay, Ontario, P7A 5 and 3, and then we have the salutation, Dear Mr. Fair. So that is the standard format for a business letter. We have all the text is pushed against the left-hand side of the screen. So that's what we call the left-hand justification. At the start, the first block of text is your information, right? And then a space, and then you have the date, a space, and then you have their information. And then you have your salutation. So very similar to the cover letter. So that is the first part of the letter. And the letter reads, I am returning the hockey sweater you sent me on June 1st for an exchange or refund. Not only does it have the wrong team logo, but as you can see, it fell apart only after one wearing. On May 8th, I ordered an Ottawa Senators hockey sweater for my son through your winter and spring catalog. Item number 402067332YA, page 247. The sweater that arrived 2 weeks later was a Toronto Maple Leaf sweater. Although my son was very disappointed, I was willing to overlook the mistake and keep the sweater. So we've got the business letter, and it's organized into paragraphs. And so that helps the reader to understand your information, and each paragraph should be about a specific topic. And you see the opening paragraph is the main idea. Right? So the opening paragraph introduces the main idea and the problem, or in this case it seems to be like a complaint. And then the second paragraph is offering more info. Right? So we've got more info about the main idea. We've got specific details, right? The author of the article, wants to be heard, wants this letter to be received, and so she's providing specific details, like the date she ordered it, the item she ordered. She even went so far as to include the catalog and the number in the catalog. She gave a timeline. So 2 weeks later it arrives, but it's the wrong sweater. So um, she's got lots of specific details, lots of relevant information. So we hear what the problem is, and then we get more information about it. The letter continues as follows. Unfortunately, my son wore the jersey once outside to show his friends, and, the next day, the material had come apart almost completely. We have never had any problems with the sweaters we have purchased from your company in the past, so I am sure this is an isolated case. Please replace this sweater that I am sending in this package. I have enclosed the bill I received from you. I would appreciate it if you could send an Ottawa Senator sweater as quickly as possible. If you do not have any in stock, please refund my money since we are not interested in receiving another Maple Leafs sweater. So we've got paragraph 3, and paragraph 3 is a continuation of the problem, right? So with paragraph 3, the author of the letter has fully expressed her complaint, right? She's got this problem, and she's fully explained it. And then paragraph 4, she's making, again, a specific request. And that is, worth spending some time talking about. When we're doing business communication, and when we're communicating with people inside our own business or with other people, and we are making requests of them, it's really important to make that request specific, right? And so I think the author of this letter has certainly done that. You know what her problem is. You know how the problem occurred, and you definitely know how she wants the problem solved, right? The owner of the store, Mr. Fair, he may not, even though his name is Mr. Fair, he may not be fair, and he may not agree with her request. He may shut down her request. He may not even answer her letter, right? But if he gets this letter in his hands, he can't say that her request is unclear or he's not sure what he wants her to do. It should be pretty clear what he's being told to do, and now it's up to him whether or not he actually does it. Then we have the closing. Thank you for your swift attention to this matter. My son looks forward to receiving his new sweater. Yours truly, Lori Hopeful. Right? So that's the we call that, the closing message of a letter. It usually involves some kind of a thank you. Thank you for your time, sort of like attitude. And then we have the closing salutation. So there's an opening salutation like Dear Mr. Fair, and the closing salutation is Yours truly. And then of course you've got the signature. And then you've got the printed name. So there's all the components of this article, all laid out for us. So what kind of a letter would it be? Is she informing? Is she informing? Is she requesting? Or is she persuading or trying to build goodwill? Is this a letter of apology? Is it a cover letter, a follow-up letter, a letter of acceptance? Is it a letter of complaint? Is it a letter of resignation? Is it a thank you letter? Is it a letter of request? Is it a collection letter? So tell me what kind of letter it is. Is the letter written in block or modified block format? How do you know? Okay, so just to give you a quick lesson on that. Now, some of you may have noticed that this is a that letter is a direct reference to the kids' book, The Hockey Sweater. So if I just typed in the hockey sweater on Wikipedia, and I'm going to copy and paste it into a Word document and just talk a bit about justification and how we arrange words on the page. So what I've done is I've copy and pasted the text from a Wikipedia page. I have all the blue the blue hyperlinks are still on there. So if you're in Word and you highlight a whole bunch of text, so you take your mouse, click behind the first letter, and then drag all the way to the bottom, and then release it after the last word in the paragraph. And this top thing is called the ribbon. And if you go to the home ribbon, usually in the middle you see you've got a line left. So left justification is all of the text is on the left. Right justification is all of the text is pushed to the right margin, right? So that's right justification. And the opposite of that is left justification. And in between those you have centered, right? So we have center justification. So that's where everything is pushed in the middle. And so instead of lining up with the left and right hand margin, everything is put right in the middle. Usually that's for titles and headings and things like that. And then we have something called block format. And in block format, the text is stretched from the left margin all the way to the right margin. And you don't have what's called a ragged. You don't have what's called a ragged margin. So in block format, whoops, where's my pen? I can't use it for this, but yeah, so like in block format, the text is stretched, and it starts on the left-hand side, and it goes all the way to the right-hand side. That's block format. But in left-hand justification, it's called a ragged margin because there's empty spaces at the end, right? And so some newspapers and some articles will publish their work in block format, just so it takes up all the space on the page. And that's what they mean by block format. So there's block format. There is left-hand justification, center justification, and right-hand justification. So 4 ways you can arrange the text in a document. So is this block or modified block format? So block format would be left and right hand margins, everything is stretched from left to right, and then modified block would be one of the others, like center, left, or right. Rewrite Lori's letter as a memo that could instead be sent to Mr. Fair. 6 marks. You can use the following format. So, essentially what you have to know there is that, the letter is the long form, and the memo, or short for memorandum, is the short version. So what you have to do is you have to go back to the letter that the mom wrote trying to get that new hockey jersey for her son, and you have to shorten it down. Okay, so you've got to cut some details that aren't quite essential that could be cut from the material. So if we go back to the letter, so you may want to shorten the description. You may not need, so you're going to have less details in there. So the memo is going to have less detail, but really importantly, still has the purpose intact. Still has the purpose, right? So it's gonna have a different impact on the reader because there's going to be less detail. There's going to be less words. But what you're doing here is you're trying to shorten it down, trying to find a way to communicate this more succinctly, right? Trying to find a way to express the same idea with less words, right? So it's kind of like a summary, but you're just instead of say 4 paragraphs, try and do it in 2. So I think she has 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, she basically has 4 paragraphs. So take those 4 paragraphs, try and get it down to 2, try to cut it in half, and that should be enough. Okay, part D. Send an email message to your teacher stating how you feel about Lori's letter. Do you agree with her decision to write Mr. Fair a letter to express her thoughts? Does it have an advantage over a phone call? Why or why not? Okay? So do you agree with her decision to write Mr. Fair a letter to express her thoughts? Does it have an advantage over a phone call? So why or why not? So in your email, you could write about the effectiveness. Write about the effectiveness of the letter. Whoops. Will it work? And maybe answer the question, could she have done this another way? I guess more specifically through email. Right? So you're offering your opinion, and you're sending me an email stating how you feel about the letter. So, tell me about the effectiveness of the letter. Do you think it'll work? Do you agree with her decision? And does it have an? Oh, sorry, I said instead of email, it should say through a phone call. So could she have done this through a phone call? We'll come back to this in a second if we have more time, but we need to move on to Um, all right, so key question 31. The following profile illustrates the fact that emailing is an important communication channel that requires time and effort. Its use in many types of workplaces is now commonplace, and you will understand the significance of good emailing practice after having read the profile. Based on the profile, you'll complete the following questions. So, according to Tara Lynn Hughes of TD Canada Trust, why is it important to make a good email impression? List 3 acronyms used when emailing and what they stand for. CBC and NHL are examples. In at least 3 sentences, tell what advice is given in order to create effective email messages. Send an email message to your teacher briefly describing the job you have now or one you hope to have in the near future. Is emailing something that you are doing presently at work or you may be doing in a possible upcoming job? Is emailing something that you are doing presently at work or you may be doing in a possible upcoming job? Your email message will be a short paragraph consisting of at least 5 sentences. Okay, so let's have a look at that. So this is from the from your textbook, from your unit material. It's important to make a good email impression. Sometimes people don't approach emails as professionally as they would to face-to-face presentation or conversation with someone. But email is an important communication channel that requires time and effort, says Tara Lynn Hughes, Internal Communications Manager for TD Canada Trust. If you take the time to order your thoughts rather than just dumping a long stream of consciousness document into a colleague's mailbox, you will be showing your personal effectiveness as a communicator while also supporting an effective corporate communications environment. The language that you choose can also add or detract from the power of your message. I can't stress enough the importance of using concise, jargon-free language in business emails, she says. Write in plain English. For example, a simple word like use works better than utilized. She also cautions against funny acronyms, exclamation marks, and writing in all caps, which implies someone is screaming at you. All of these things are very off-putting. If you use them, there is a danger, things will get misinterpreted, and people won't pay attention to your message. To ensure this doesn't happen, she's come up with email templates for her employees to use. The templates are made up of 3 sections. The first line is a subject line. There are 3 options for classifying your email. So FYI, that's the subject, so that's for your information. ACT is action required, and URG is urgent action required. It's used sparingly to communicate critical information that requires immediate attention. So that kind of falls into the same categories of the business letters. You know, you're either just informing someone or you're making an active request where they have to do something. The second section of the FYI, ACT, URG template is what Tara Lynn calls the summary section. That consists of a 2 to 3 sentence summary of your message. To write an effective summary, you should ask yourself questions about what is new or different and why would employees want to need or know the information you have to share. If you're using the ACT or URGE template, then you'd complete the action section, which clearly states what you want the reader to do, like, read the review attached report. Even with the opportunity to elaborate on the particulars, Tara Lynn advises keeping an e-message short. Anything over 3 screens is too long. Online, you've got 10 to 15 seconds to catch someone's attention. Emails work very well as a heads-up form of communication. Provide a concise summary and then direct people to where the more detailed information is. Perfecting the art of summary can also come in handy when dealing with emails that get forwarded from person to person. If you come in on an issue halfway through, there's no summary up at the top and you won't have any context. And often when a text is forwarded on, important information gets lost. Summarizing the conversation before sending the email off again is not only a courtesy but a must. Sometimes sending an email is inappropriate. The more complex an issue, the more sensitivities surround it. The better it is just to pick up the phone and go directly to the source. Email, on the other hand, can be a timely solution for circulating documents, as well as for quickly reaching large groups of employees something Tara Lynn often has to do. But, she warns, if the messages you send out to such large audiences are not crisp, concise, and well organized, you risk being inundated with questions in response to your email communication. Put yourself in the reader's shoes before you send your information, and always, always keep those emails precise and to the point. Right, and this all of that, it speaks to, if you want to be heard and you want to express information, you've got to think about your audience, right? And think about how busy they are and all the things they have going on in their life. So you want to make things as easy as possible for them to respond to your email, right? And that's why it's a very useful suggestion to give a summary. And I think that's really important for people. It's like, here's the short form. Here's the problem in a sentence. If you have the time and you want to help out and you can act today and you want to know more, then you can read the full report. You can read my whole email. Sometimes people see like a huge email and they just won't read it. Like, or sometimes you see on Facebook where someone will post like 8 paragraphs and you're just like, it's just too much. It's just too much text. They haven't taken the time to organize their thoughts, right? So, so in this class, we've done lots of summaries where you are summarizing somebody else's writing, but it's a very useful exercise to summarize your own writing, right? And just think about, like, what am I trying to say here, right? And this kind of goes hand in hand with our our discussions in this class about point first writing, and stating your main idea right off the bat, and then having the supporting information come later, right? So get all the important information off the bat and then respond later. So after you read that, give it some thought. Why is it important to set a good email impression? So again, think about you, the writer of the email, and more importantly, think about the recipient of your email. Why is it important to make a good email impression? The acronym one just simply lists some other acronyms that you're familiar with when emailing and what they stand for. Like some examples like NNEC come in mind, SLIFNA, NAN. Just think about things like that. So large businesses operating in Sulakaut and in the north, but you could also think about like TSN. So any kind of company that has a short form, right? Just simply list the acronym. List the acronym and tell me the full form, what it stands for. In at least 3 sentences, tell what advice is given in order to create effective email messages. So, like, for example, you could send someone that article by email, and then you could summarize it for them and say, like, oh, look, here's an article about email effectiveness, but I've gotten it down to like the key pieces of advice that I learned from reading this. And then send an email message to your teacher briefly describing the job you have now or have hope to getting in the near future, right? So your email message will be a short paragraph consisting of at least 5 sentences. So after reading this article written by Tara Lynn Hughes of TD Canada Trust, follow her tips and then write me an email. So you can write me an actual email, or you can just simply type it up or write it down on a piece of paper, with the subject heading. If you do this old school with a pen and a pad, then I'd like you to follow the email conventions of, I'd like you to write it out like, from to, subject, just the way it would look in an email server, and then the message itself, right? So I want you to do all those things. From an awesome student to an amazing teacher. I'm just having fun. And subject will be, you know, a job I want to apply for. And then the message of that letter, right? So make sure you have all those key components. All right, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you next week where we delve more into Unit 3.